He didn't trip. He didn't make a mistake. When the young waiter deliberately spilled that cup of steaming coffee onto the expensive white suit of the woman sitting by the window, everyone froze. Gasps rippled through the cafe. The woman's eyes, sharp and cold like glass, lifted in disbelief. She was the kind of person who didn't get coffee spilled on her. She got apologies, bows, and compensation. But the man standing before her didn't flinch. He simply whispered, almost trembling, "You don't remember me, do you?" The sound of those words cut through the silence harder than the crash of the cup that followed. And in that moment, no one in the cafe knew that what had just begun wasn't an accident. It was a reckoning years in the making. Years earlier, he had been a man with everything: a wife, a home, and a little girl who loved pancakes every Sunday. But that life had ended the day a powerful company, her company, decided to shut down the factory where he worked. Hundreds of workers were laid off without warning, their savings gone overnight. He had begged, pleaded for a few more months so he could keep food on the table for his daughter Emma. But all he got was a printed notice and a signature. Her signature. The signature of Clara Vance, the CEO of Vance Industries, who at that moment was now sitting across from him, holding a napkin to her suit. He'd spent years trying to rebuild his life. He took jobs no one else wanted. Night shifts, cleaning floors, washing dishes. His hands were always rough, his body always tired. But every night when he looked at his daughter's sleeping face, he promised her things would get better. They never did. The world didn't forgive men like him easily. Then, one day, fate played its cruel joke. He got hired at a high-end cafe downtown, the same cafe where the city's rich and powerful came to discuss their business. And among the regulars was Clara Vance. Always alone, always cold, always perfect. He thought he'd buried his anger long ago. But seeing her face again, it wasn't rage that surfaced, it was pain. A quiet, burning kind of pain that came from years of helplessness. And so that morning, when she ordered her usual cappuccino, he decided to do something reckless, something human, something that might finally make her look beyond her glass walls. She sat stunned, the brown stains spreading across her sleeve. "Are you insane? Do you have any idea?" she began, but stopped mid-sentence. His eyes weren't angry. They were broken. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly, though there was no apology in his tone. "It's just, sometimes the past doesn't let go easily." Her brows furrowed. "The past," he sighed. "You once signed a paper that closed a factory in Westbridge." "My factory. I worked there 10 years. You called it a necessary restructure." "I called it the day I lost everything." Her lips parted slightly. For a second, something flickered in her expression. Guilt, maybe, but she quickly masked it with her usual steel. "You think this justifies your behavior?" she snapped. "No," he said. "But maybe now you'll remember that your choices had faces." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She'd faced protesters, lawsuits, and journalists, but never a man who spoke like that. Not with hatred, but with honesty. The next morning, she looked up the Westbridge closure. Thousands had been affected, families uprooted. She remembered it only as a cost-cutting measure, but one story caught her eye. A single father who lost his home months after the shutdown. His wife had died from illness shortly after, and he had been raising a child alone ever since. His name was Daniel Reed. Days passed. Daniel expected to be fired, but the manager said the CEO herself had requested he stay on. She'd handled the matter personally. One evening, as he was finishing his shift, Clara returned. No expensive suit this time. Just a plain dress and a nervous look that didn't belong to a woman used to commanding rooms. "Daniel," she said softly. I looked into what happened. He didn't reply. I didn't know. I know that sounds hollow, but I didn't. Back then it was all numbers, reports, projections. I never thought of the people. He wiped his hands on a towel, staring at the floor. "People like me don't exist in reports." Clara nodded. "You're right. We don't see faces until they spill coffee on us." That made him almost laugh. Almost. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. She started coming by often. Not for coffee, but to talk. She asked about his daughter, about the factory, about life outside of boardrooms. He told her stories. Funny ones. Painful ones, human ones. And slowly, the wall between guilt and forgiveness began to crumble. One rainy evening, she met his daughter, Emma. The little girl offered her a cookie and said, "Daddy says you're learning how to be nice again." Clara laughed through the tears she didn't expect to shed. That night, she made a decision. A month later, Vance Industries announced the reopening of a new community-driven plant in Westbridge. this time focused on fair wages, worker welfare, and local partnerships. The first name on the employment list, Daniel Reed, as operations supervisor. When the news broke, reporters asked Clara what inspired the decision. She simply said, "Someone reminded me that leadership isn't measured by how much you build, but by how much you repair." On Daniel's last day at the cafe, she stopped by once more. "You know," he said, pouring her one last cup of coffee, "if I hadn't spilled that cup that day," she smiled, "then I'd still be blind to everything that matters." He chuckled. "Wes, it was worth the dry cleaning bill." They both laughed quietly. Two people from opposite worlds, one broken by decisions, the other rebuilt by forgiveness, sharing a silent understanding that sometimes the biggest accidents are the ones life plans for us. And as she left, he turned to see his daughter smiling by the counter, drawing hearts on napkins again. This time the world didn't feel unfair. It just felt redeemed.